On January 19, 2008, the chairman of Société Générale, one of the oldest banks in France, gathered his board of directors in a room and told them something that made grown men go pale. A single trader had hidden $73.3 billion in unauthorized positions. The exposure was larger than the entire GDP of Croatia, and nobody had noticed. His name was Jerome Kerviel. He was 31 years old. He made $66,000 a year, and for nearly 3 years he had been running the most audacious unauthorized trading operation in the history of modern banking, right under the noses of the people who were supposed to stop him. The question that haunted investigators, regulators, and the French public for years afterward was not just how he did it. It was whether anyone truly wanted him stopped. Jerome Kerviel was not supposed to be dangerous. He grew up in Pont-l'Abbé, a small town in Brittany, the son of a hairdresser and a metalwork teacher. He was not a prodigy. He did not attend the elite grande école that produced France's financial aristocracy. He studied finance at the University of Lyon, earned a master's degree, and joined Société Générale in 2000, not on the trading floor, but in the back office, the compliance department, the part of the bank whose entire job was to catch fraud. For 5 years, he processed trades. He learned the system from the inside, every alert, every flag, every gap in the controls. In 2005, he was promoted to junior trader on the Delta One desk, trading European stock index futures. It was considered a low-risk, boring assignment. Small bets on which way indices would move, the kind of desk where nothing dramatic was supposed to happen. But then, Kerviel started winning. In early 2007, his unauthorized positions, bets he had placed far beyond his approved limits, began generating enormous profits. By the middle of that year, he was up 1.4 billion euros. That is not a typo. One junior trader on a desk with a daily risk limit of 125 million euros had quietly generated more than 10 times the profit of his entire division. What nobody knew was that the profits were built on a fiction. To hide the scale of his positions, Kerviel had been entering fake offsetting trades, phantom hedges that existed only on paper, designed to fool the bank's risk management systems. He had learned exactly which internal alerts to neutralize, which colleagues to send forged confirmation emails to, and which dates to backdate entries so the numbers would pass automated checks. He wasn't hacking. He was exploiting a system he had spent 5 years learning to game. Societe Generale's compliance team flagged his account nearly 75 times between 2006 and 2007. 75. Each time, Kerviel produced an explanation. Each time, the flag was closed. His supervisors later claimed they believed his profits were real. Investigators would later suggest the bank may have turned a blind eye as long as the money kept coming. By late 2007, the fiction was becoming impossible to sustain. Global markets were beginning to crack. The subprime mortgage crisis was bleeding into European equities. Kerviel's positions, massive long bets on European indices, were swinging the wrong way. The phantom hedges that had masked his exposure were not real. There was nothing protecting him. He was completely naked against the market. On January 18th, 2008, a compliance officer at Eurex, the derivatives exchange, sent Société Générale an inquiry about an unusually large position in Kerviel's account. This time, when the bank pulled the thread, the entire sweater came apart. By the morning of January 19th, senior management knew the true scale of what they were looking at. The exposure was $73.3 billion. The bank's entire market capitalization at the time was roughly $52 billion. Jerome Kerviel had bet more money than the bank was worth, and he was losing. the bank made a decision that would later draw enormous scrutiny. They began quietly unwinding Kerviel's positions over 3 days, January 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, during one of the worst market sell-offs in years. Because they were forced to dump massive long positions into a falling market, the losses crystallized fast. By the time the unwinding was complete, Societe Generale had lost 4.9 billion euros. Approximately $7.2 billion in just 72 hours. On January 24, 2008, the bank announced the loss to the world. The revelation sent shockwaves through global markets already teetering on collapse. The Federal Reserve, unaware of what Societe Generale was doing in the background, had actually cut interest rates by 75 basis points on January 22nd. An emergency cut that some economists later argued was partly triggered by the panic selling the bank's secret unwind had caused. Jerome Kerviel was arrested on January 26, 2008. He was wearing a grey jacket. He walked into the Paris police headquarters on Rue du Bastion and surrendered without incident. He later told investigators he had expected his managers to notice and step in. He said he believed the bank had known. Societe Generale said he had acted entirely alone. The trial ran for years. In October 2010, a French court found Jerome Kerviel guilty of breach of trust, forgery, and unauthorized computer use. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, with 3 years suspended and ordered to repay the full 4.9 billion euros loss, a number so divorced from reality that even the judge seemed to recognize it as symbolic. Kerviel appealed repeatedly. He marched to Rome. He met the Pope. He gave interviews calling himself a scapegoat. In 2016, a French labor court ruled that Société Générale bore partial responsibility for the losses and ordered the bank to pay Kerviel 450,000 euros in damages for wrongful dismissal. 13 compliance alerts had been sent to Kerviel's direct supervisors. Documentation showed his managers had received reports of positions far beyond his authorized limits. Not one supervisor was criminally charged. Not one compliance officer was prosecuted. The bank paid a 4 million euros fine to French regulators, 4 million euros, against a 4.9 billion euros loss. The 4.9 billion euros repayment order against Kerviel was eventually reduced to 1 million euros by a French court in 2016 after judges determined the bank had been negligent in its oversight. He never paid a centime of the original judgment. He works today as an IT consultant near Paris. Societe Générale was fined $292 million by US authorities in 2008 for separate violations related to the same period. The bank survived. Jerome Kerviel was not a mastermind. He was a middle manager who found a door left unlocked and walked through it every single day for 3 years. The door was unlocked because the profits were good and the questions were inconvenient. What haunts this story is not the $7.2 billion. It is the 75 ignored warnings. Somewhere in a database, every single one of those flags still exists. Closed, resolved, filed away, as if they meant nothing at all. If this story shocked you, the next one is worse. Subscribe so you don't miss it.